I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'm not even supposed to be here today! Oh, fuck you!
Come on, you want me to drive? You're supposed to be suicidal. Remember, I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fuck me in the ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new Christmas movie review. And our next Christmas movie review is going to be for last year's The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne, the very guy who directed films like Election, directed Sideways, directed The Descendants, is back with a brand new dark comedy. And not just any dark comedy, a Christmas dark comedy. That's definitely bound to become a Christmas classic. I'll explain that later. But what is the plot of The Holdovers? Well, nobody likes teacher Paul Hunham, played by Paul Giamatti. Not his students, not his fellow faculty, not the headmaster. They all find him exasperating. With no family nowhere to go over Christmas holiday in 1970, Paul has to pretty much remain at school to supervise students unable to journey home. So after a few days, like one student holdover though remains, which is troublemaking 15-year-old boy named Angus, who is pretty much a good student but whose bad behavior always threatens to get him expelled. So, and also joining Paul and Angus is head cook Mary, played by Davine Randolph, who caters to sons of privilege and whose own son was recently lost in Vietnam. These three very different shipwrecked people form this Christmas family, sharing iconic misadventures during 2 snowy weeks in New England, and the real journey is how they have to help one another understand that they are not beholden to their past so they can choose their own futures. Yeah. So, when it comes to the production of this movie, The Holdovers is actually the second collaboration between director Alexander Payne and Paul Giamatti after 2004 Sideways. Payne conceived the film after watching Marcel Pagnol's 1935 film Merluz and contacted screenwriter David Hemmingson, whose boarding school television pilot apparently had been read. In 2013, Hemmingson was running the show Whiskey Calaveras, and the television pilot Stonehaven was set in present time, but Alexander Payne suggested a film using an older setting instead, like 1958 or 1970. Hemmingson then agreed on 1970 because it had more in common with the present time, and 1958 was apparently close to Dead Poet Society timeline. So when it comes to filming of the movie took place from January to March 2022 in Massachusetts. The Holdovers would then, after it was shot and marketed, would go on to premiere at the 50th Telluride Film Festival on August 31st, 2023, and was released in the United States by Focus Features, literally around the very end of October of last year, October 27th, 2023. Ironically, when it comes to the reception of the movie made about over $45 million worldwide, and, well, got positive reviews from critics. Actually, not just positive reviews. It got critical acclaim from critics. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2023 by the National Board and received many other awards too. It got 2 wins at the Golden Globes and the Berkshire County Film Awards. Davine won Best Supporting Actress at both ceremonies. And received 5 nominations at the 96 Academy Awards, such as Best Picture and Best Actor for Paul Giamatti. And Randolph won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress earlier this year. So yeah, now, as for my reaction. Now, technically, this was not the first time I had watched this movie. I actually saw this film in the theaters last year, 2 days after Christmas. And I gotta say, when it comes to this film, I actually like this film quite a lot. This director had also directed another movie I liked called 1999's Election, which starred Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick, and can be seen as somewhat like the spiritual successor to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And that's pretty much a film that I wish that movie got the box office or Something About Mary did, and all the attention There's Something About Mary did instead of There's Something About Mary itself. And also should have got more money than Inspector Gadget made. Which was pretty much a shitty film Matthew Broderick made around the same year as Election. Yeah, and somehow apparently more people went and saw that trash, Inspector Gadget instead of Election. And I'll never know why. And yeah, and also, I do really like Paul Giamatti as an actor in general, and this easily has to be one of the best performances of his career. This movie, it's not really, masterpiece worthy, but it was pretty good, and I think this is going to become a pretty good Christmas film as the years progress. Right here, we get this little movie about these, normal people, real people with not perfect lives, and it's a movie that can show you that love can definitely grow and stuff. And the people in this movie's lives, they get thrown together, they have to pretty much be paired together, they're stuck in this boarding school together, all three of them, for the entire holiday break. And as the film progresses, they grow to care and respect each other. It also shows you that, it shows you that you won't always know what a person is going through or how they get to a certain point in their lives. And of course, this film also really does give great homage to 70s filmmaking without overplaying the hand. The shots, the color, the set, the ratio, it really feels well. And it doesn't really look, and it almost doesn't look like major effort was put into it, and it works very well. And the colors and the indoors, the outdoors, and the wide shots of the boarding school, the snow are very wonderful to look at. And all three of our main characters, Paul Giamatti, Davine Randolph, what's the other guy's name? Dominic Sessa, all give very respectable and great performances. Paul Giamatti on his usual A game. Davine Randolph brings this lot of nuance and emotion to the scene she's in. And Dominic Sessa actually definitely kills it as well, especially because this is his feature film debut. This is the first film he did. And honestly, this guy's got a bright acting future ahead of him. Now, how does the plot of this movie go? Well, this is set in December 1970. This school is about to go on its Christmas break. Paul Hunham is the teacher, our main character at Barton Academy. This pretty much this male boarding school that he once attended on scholarship. The students and fellow teachers, they all don't like him because he's too strict, he's too stubborn to work with. And Dr. Woodrup, the headmaster of the place, and Hunham's former student, reprimands him for constantly costing more money and flunking this other guy's kid, and so Princeton University has to rescind the offer of admission. So, as a consequence for his actions, Hunham has to basically supervise 5 students that have to be stuck there because their families can't really take them for their holiday breaks. Especially this one other kid, our other main character named Angus Tully, whose mother pretty much canceled his family trip to honeymoon with her new husband. And also, who also has to also stay behind, is the cafeteria manager, Mary Lamb, whose late son Curtis had attended Barton and died in the Vietnam War after getting drafted. And unlike other Barton students, Curtis really did not get a deferment because apparently he could not afford to go to college. So, once the whole school is closed and they're all going on break, Hunham makes all 6 of these students study and exercise on their winter break, which they're not happy to do. And as time passes, we kind of see that Paul Hunham may be a bit douchey and all, but he's not necessarily as much of an asshole as a lot of the people in that school seem to really make him out to be. Because when it comes to his scenes with Mary or Davine's character, they actually have really good scenes together on screen. And he's actually much more, and he definitely has a pretty good friendship with this character. In a way, he's actually much happier when he's around this character. And there's one asshole student that basically insults her cooking, and he straight up gets mad at him for it, and pretty much yells at him for doing that. So he technically actually is somewhat of a good person on the inside. And our kid lead Angus, he may seem like a little bit whiny a little bit at first, but I'll be honest, with how his home life kind of is, how it's clear like his mom clearly does not really love him at all, just shuts down their Christmas plans to go honeymooning with her new husband and stuff. And like, it's clear his mom clearly does not really love him at all. And so, and there's like one scene where one of the kids actually realizes he kind of like as his nightmare or wet the bed, and Angus actually comforts the kid right there. And so he's also a pretty good person on the inside. So after all the 6 days for a while, the asshole student's wealthy father arrives and announces that he's going to take all 5 of the students on the family ski trip with their parents' permission. However, Angus cannot reach his parents, so he's stuck at Barton with Hunham, and Mary has to carry out the rest of the Christmas break there. The Holdovers already has an interesting premise and some interesting main characters. You got the nerdy history teacher, the troubled student, the sad cook. The depiction of the high-cost private boarding schools is pretty realistic. The characters are very well controlled and written. There's pretty clever dialogues, intelligent constructed scenes. And the plot really does keep the viewer engaged from one end to another of the film. And when the characters do kind of start off as pricking, like I said, they already still have likable traits to them, so they're still likable people at many times. Like, Hunham's tough at times, but he does have a great friendship with Mary, defending her from a bully student's insults. He actually does give Angus a decently positive score, a B+ on his assignment, because he actually does see the effort Angus puts in his assignments. So he's actually is pretty decent with one student in his class. And like Angus even has likable traits too. Like when he covers like one of the students when he has a nightmare, when he tells like one kid that where him and the asshole student were having this fight, that rats out and says the asshole student started the fight, and the asshole student gets revenge during PE by stealing that kid's glove. And Angus pretty much tells him that he clearly did that just to make him feel like garbage. And so the kid pretty much throws the other glove in there. And the performances in this movie are exceptional. When it comes to Paul Giamatti's performance in this movie, he delivers this compelling portrayal of the man grappling with his own loneliness and the challenges of mentorship. The film's narrative is richly layered. You have themes of loneliness, friendship, personal growth. It's a story that really well resonates and offers this poignant reflection on the human condition. And the film's setting in the 1970s really does add a layer of nostalgia to 70s made films. Like, this really feels like a film that was made in the 70s. Wait, it wasn't made in the 70s, but it really does feel like this would be a film that would come out during the 1970s era. And it further enhances the emotional depth of the narrative. At first, like when the plot of the movie does kick off, you have 5 students, but after that wealthy father arrives and takes all of them on the ski trip, Angus is the only one left, and so the rest of the movie after that is just really Hunham, Angus, and Mary. It's just those 3 you're mostly about, as the rest of the movie progresses from that part. There, and more you know of Hunham, like Hunham is annoyed and does have a weakness for booze. Angus, like, you can definitely kind of reason with his frustration, and you can kind of see why he can be a bit bratty. Because his mother left him at school because she would rather go travel with her husband instead of like spend any Christmas with her son at all. So you can definitely kind of feel sorry for Angus. And Mary's grieving over her son that got killed in Vietnam. And so the movie, you watch these 3 struggle to bond. This like little kind of like thing of psychology. And we know as the movie progresses, they're going to kind of form somewhat of a little family connection as the film goes, but it actually does it in a very well, in a not too predictable way, in a not too cliched way. And the tagline for the film, Discomfort and Joy, is actually a pretty genius tagline for the film. Like, the first does overshadow the latter, where these 3 are isolated from the world in their own way, they begin influencing one another, And they're just, like, this movie does well in portraying that these people are really broken and wounded, and they need to deserve love and friendship as much as anyone else does, as much as anyone else in today's world. And it becomes kind of a calling card for this trio. And eventually, as the film progresses, that turning point does happen when the three get invited to a Christmas party. But before that part happens, or during some of the time when Hunham is trying to be a little softer and is sharing these holiday cookies with Mary and Angus, Angus lies saying he needs to go to the bathroom, so Hunham lets him. But then, of course, Hunham hears Angus calling this hotel on the school telephone. And so Hunham is furious about this, and the two argue about Hunham's discipline policies. And Hunham gives him 2 detentions, and Angus is pretty much like, being stuck with you is one big fucking detention. And Angus runs through the school halls. And at the gym, and he gets to the gym, and Hunham pretty much tells him, I'll wipe my hands with you. And Angus defiantly leaps onto a pile of gym equipment and breaks his shoulder in the process. And so Hunham has to take Angus to the hospital. And they realize they have to kind of pay insurance, and that's going to get Hunham in trouble because they're not allowed to leave the school. They can't really leave, or Hunham will get in trouble and get fired. But Angus pretty much, this is kind of the first really good deed Angus does, and where they kind of do start to kind of bond a little more after this bit. He protects Hunham from blame, and so he lies to the doctors about the circumstances of his injury, being he was taken to his hockey tryouts. Right there, and so, and as they're arguing on their way there, Angus even calls him out for saying he was gonna wipe his hands clean of him, and Hunham clarifies no, I didn't mean that literally, I meant that metaphorically. And so then Angus has Hunham take him to a restaurant to have some burgers, and Angus is trying to order alcohol, and I was oh no you're not. So Angus has to order Coke, and Hunham orders this alcoholic drink, and at the restaurant they encounter Lydia Crane, who's Woodruff's assistant, and then Hunham flirts with Lydia, and she invites the pair to their Christmas Eve party within a few days. So Angus, Hunham, Mary, Burns, janitor Danny, who's the other one also obviously there, to obviously clean the place up there. But those 4, they go to Lydia's party, where originally Hunham does not want to go to that party, but Mary just kind of makes them all go. So they attend Lydia's party. Angus kisses Lydia's niece Elise. Hunham then discovers Lydia as a boyfriend, and then Mary gets drunk and then has this unfortunately emotional breakdown over her son's death. And right here, guys, Devine gives a great performance in this very scene when she then breaks down crying over her son's death. It's really starting to hit, her son's demise is really starting to hit her hard. In this moment, you can just really feel sorry for the character in this whole moment there. And so everybody else then leaves, and Hunham insists that they need to leave early, but then Hunham and Angus argue. And then Angus kind of, at first we're led to believe at this part that Angus then says, they're arguing, how Hunham did not want to have to be watching over Angus. And then, right there, and then Angus says his father's dead, and Mary does not like how Hunham talked to Angus, and she reprimands him for not being sympathetic at all towards him, and especially because he pretty much said some pretty rude things. So in a way, so it's kind of nice to see Mary actually kind of call out Hunham on his selfish behavior. And so Hunham realizes he's being way too prickish and realizes he's being way too strict. So he does kind of feel bad for his actions. And so the next day is Christmas Day, and Hunham arranges a small Christmas celebration where he does find this, like, tiny little tree, and it's a pretty crappy tree. And it's like, when he presents it, it's all, like, bent over. And and Angus is like, where's the ornaments? And and Angus gets this, like, book as a Christmas present, and this card contains some money from his folks. And Mary then tells Hunham that he should grant a wish for Angus for this field trip to Boston after Angus announces he wants to go to Boston. Hunham is trying to stick true that they're not allowed to leave campus, but Mary persuades him to let Angus go to Boston. But on their way to Boston, though, they stop in Roxbury to drop off Mary to spend time with her pregnant sister and to kind of, like, be able to grieve her son in peace with them. But, like, and of course, Hunham makes Angus carry up Mary's things, and then walk her to her apartments, and so, like, after Angus just bring Mary's things to her apartment, it's like later, oh no, you're not going anywhere, you gotta walk me up to my door. Right there, so yeah, they do have quite a bit of great comedy in this movie. The comedy in this film is actually funny, so, like, it is kind of somewhat more of a dramedy, but it's not like an overly unhappy dramedy. Like, at least there's still some comedy in the film, and in a way that actually does kind of lighten the mood. It prevents the film from being over depressing and boring. But once Angus and Hunham get to Boston, they walk through Boston. Angus goes ice skating, and they visit the Museum of Fine Arts, and they have another encounter of an old person from Hunham's life, this other classmate from Harvard College, who had become a successful academic. So Hunham makes up this lie about his career. Angus kind of goes along with it, and then after the person and his wife that's with him leave, Angus then finds out, and us viewers also find out, that apparently Hunham didn't get to complete his time at Harvard. He got expelled because his donor son thought he was plagiarizing, and so he got in a fight and hit him with a car, and the incident kind of ruined Hunham's career prospects. So he's pretty much now, hence why he's kind of now working at that school, that pretty much bar and boarding school. And because the old bar headmaster had taken pity on him and got him a job at that place. Like, in this whole film, throughout all of Hunham's scenes, like, Giamatti really shows that he's a master of this material, and only really goes over the time of top or two, and it's also pretty funny, and it's actually very well done here. It's painful, the humorous each time he gets anxious to infuse this ancient civilization, does fact into the conversations, and newcomer Dominic Sessa, he really shows great star potential here, and nails this very complex first role. But Davina is easily by far the best performance of the movie. Like, the way her character doles out advice to Hunham and comfort to Angus is kind of like she kind of even feels more like a more better mom figure to Angus than his actual bitchy mom really is. Like, his actual mom, who pretty much just leaves him at that school all Christmas break. And depression is kind of this thing running through these characters, and it's actually acknowledged, but it's not the main focus of the film. In Alexander Payne's direction, it does really well shine in The Holdovers. It really definitely balances the whimsical nature of a Christmas fable with the raw coming-of-age storylines that unravel in increasingly strange, emotional, and profound ways. And it doesn't shy away from the melancholy that often accompanies the holiday season at times. And it does serve up this generous helping of dramedy, as in, like, dramatic comedy, with the reproduction of 1970s style movies. Another principle, like, when it comes to Dominic Sessa's character, like, who's the brooding and bored student that better develops as the movie progresses, we learn from him that he has this history of being expelled from private schools, and he has a financially stable but he has emotionally unstable family life, and we find out if he gets expelled from this school again, he will have to go to military school. And it's clear that this guy does not want to get kicked out of this school, for that pretty much reason alone. And that's why he also does lie to the hospital workers, because Hunham will not only get fired, but he'll also be kicked out. And through the story, like, we learn that the teacher and the student have more in common than they might have guessed. And their bond accumulates in this really self-sacrificing act to the point where, like, Hunham does slowly kind of somewhat become someone kind of becomes like this other new father figure towards Angus. Like, that's what the Holdovers explores. The themes of loneliness, the themes of redemption, and the unexpected connections that can really change a person's life. And the strength lies in its character development, where each main character goes through some personal growth. Paul, Angus, and Mary's interactions, they have both comedic and touching moments, and they highlight the importance of empathy and understanding. Then eventually, during their visit at Boston, Hunham and Angus, they see this movie at the Orpheum Theater. While watching the movie, though, Angus sneaks away. Hunham then immediately thinks he's ditching again, but Angus explains that he has to go see his father, and he's just doing a quick visit, so Hunham actually agrees to accompany him here, because they assume that they're going to a cemetery, but we find out right here that Angus's father didn't actually die. His father was actually alive, but had got confined to a psychiatric hospital. And when Angus visits, he talks to him for a bit. He gives his father a snow globe. And his father sadly tells him, I think they're putting something in my food. And right there, and this is the moment where you actually really do feel sad, where you just further feel sad for the poor kid. His father's in a psychiatric hospital. The actual person her mom is married to is not even his father. It's her new fiance, and it's clear even her new fiance clearly also clearly isn't too fond of Angus either. Like, this kid clearly has this kind of shitty life, so you really do see all his struggles and his frustrations. And after that, so after the visit, Angus then expresses concern that his future is going to echo his father's at this fancy restaurant, but Hunham comforts Angus right here, and they have this first little father and son like interaction. Whereas in like the first half they argued, and that's that. And then after the Christmas Eve party, they do start to warm up to each other, and this part actually completes their character developments. He comforts Angus, and he affirms that Angus is not the same as his father, and he's much better than his father. And then Mary arrives to join him at the restaurant, and the lady's offering him this dessert, and announces this cherry dessert that has alcohol. And they try to order it, but the waiter's like, no, we can't give that to him. He's a minor. They even try to lie saying it's his birthday, but she still doesn't give him it. And tries to give like this cake and stuff as this more appropriate dessert, but so instead they order this ice cream and cherries to go so they can try to make their own little version of the dessert. They try and make it on their car and they pour some of Hunham's alcohol on it, and they light it on fire, and they realize it's actually on fire and they have to put it out. And they realize, isn't it supposed to go out? And they quickly take off the car, and they have to step on it and put it on fire. So they failed to recreate the dessert right. And so it leads to a funny moment right here. There's quite a few funny moments, whereas the funny moments are like when Angus injures himself in the gym, and they have to drive to the hospital, and they're arguing over wiping his hands clean with them, or when Angus is trying to order alcohol at that burger restaurant, and quite a few interactions Hunham and Angus have are actually very funny. Yeah, like it's not just very great chemistry. They also have very funny like chemistry with one another at times. So it's an evenly balanced chemistry. The story is engaging and thought provoking. Of course, the cinematography, like I've said, is visually stunning. It captures the breathtaking scenery of the prep school and its surroundings, and the film's soundtrack really adds this perfect layer of emotion and enhances the viewing experience. And the movie, despite being 2 hours and 14 minutes, it has a bit of a nice pace to it. It moves pretty fast. And at times it almost feels like a much shorter film. But it doesn't really cease to convey a realistic tone. it kind of also does feel like you're watching a school play, and it also feels like you're watching a somewhat shorter film that's actually technically supposed to be 134 minutes long. And the secondary characters, they do also create some tropes. Sure, some of them are a little shallowly written, not the three mains though, the more smaller roles. But the central story really pulls things back to the core plot each time. Like, it's a kind of holiday tale that you're often familiar with, ones you've kind of grown up watching, and whereas, like, much like those films, in the end, everyone in the story really learned something. And it's a joy to watch this kind of old school storytelling that forces the hands of the director and the performances the film draws. And so, now we get on with the finale, where after they get back to Boston, they're watching the ball drop on TV, it's New Year's Eve, and they get up, and they do the countdown, and there's this noisemaker they have, but they go pretty much pull it off in the kitchen. They're not going to pull it off in the TV room. Then, of course, after that scene's over, we cut back to when Christmas break is over. School is back on. The asshole kid has come back from his ski trip with a nasty sunburn on his face. That is apparently actually looks very painful. Because apparently he got too close to the sun on that ski trip and burnt half his face. So this asshole kid actually does get some karma. He comes back from his ski trip with a miserable sunburn to resume school. And of course, like, Angus is kind of just laughing about it silently as he's staring on him, complaining about his sunburn, and like, Hunham is still kind of like, he's still somewhat kind of the grumpy teacher he was when we first saw him, but he sounds like a little more softer in his criticisms now, so you can tell he's still kind of a changed person, and he still smiles and acknowledges Angus. So he's still kind of the changed character he now is, after we saw his character development. But after that whole day, unfortunately, Hunham gets summoned to Woodrup's office, and Angus's mother and her fiance are there, and they look angry. And apparently it turns out their dad, Angus's real dad, started having a violent outburst after getting that snow globe. And he had to move hospitals. And they tell Hunham that Angus was actually not allowed to see his father at all. And they threatened to withdraw Angus from Barton and send him to the military academy, like Angus had mentioned throughout the film. And right there, like, you could tell Angus is really worried and scared of getting kicked out. And Murray actually does hold his hand and comfort him as they're waiting outside the office. But of course, Hunham, though, he defends Angus, and he blames himself at saying that he actually was the one who persuaded Angus to visit his father. And that pretty much, and even does kind of call out his parent, and kind of call out Angus's mom for not even trying to even be reachable to her own son on Christmas, in a way. So it's kind of nice to see them kind of get called out for that. But after this movie, like, after watching this movie, like, honestly though, if Angus had not been trapped at that school all Christmas break, he probably would have never been the changed kid he is now, and Hunham probably would have never been the changed person he is now. So after that, Woodrup does allow Angus to remain at Barton, but Hunham is sadly fired. And Mary is now at better terms with Curtis's death, and as Hunham has just cleaned out his office, she gives Hunham this notebook from the monograph he wants to write. And then outside, as Hunham's packing his car, Hunham and Angus share a farewell. It's not like an over-corny farewell. They just kind of more, just part on good terms with each other. This little catch you later kind of like farewell. And then when Hunham gets in his car, he takes a sip out of this alcohol thing that he stole from Woodrup's office, and he spits it out towards the school, and he drives off to a better future. Like, he's probably gonna go repair his life. He's gonna probably try to repeat his academic career. He's off to a better start for him. This new life, getting fired, is gonna lead to a better start for him. But that's the end of the Holdovers. Hunham is now somewhat of a changed man. Angus now has a better future ahead of him, especially because Hun Ham bravely took the fall for his idea to see his father, so he won't be sent to military school. So Angus is going to remain there, and he's going to have a better future ahead of him. Mary is now at peace with her son's death, and her sister is now pregnant, and her sister's going to name the baby Curtis or stuff, and Mary's going to save up for college for when that kid becomes a college-age man. Now, it's not necessarily a happy ending, but it's more bittersweet because Hun Ham is still fired for it all, so he's likely not going to see Mary again. And he's obviously not going to see Angus again. Angus still has to deal with this shitty home life with his clearly neglectful mom and clearly not too fond stepfather soon. He'll likely have to deal with them whenever he has to go home during any break. And plus, Hun Ham leaves still hated by everybody else. But everyone's character development is complete, and Hun Ham will likely have a much better future that's not at that university. Everyone else is going to have a better future ahead of them. So it's not necessarily a downer ending. In a way, it's more of a bittersweet ending that not necessarily happy, but it does complete the story pretty well. Right there. This is a kind of more unhappy ending that is actually kind of better. It's maybe not triumphant, but it's still at least kind of a satisfying way to close it out. Now, does the Holdovers have some bad qualities? The pacing is great, but there are some times when the movie does kind of maybe feel a bit sluggish. Some scenes of the school do feel a bit sluggish, but the movie's not really boring per se. It's kind of around once all the other kids leave and it's just the three of them left is where the movie does really pick up. The character of Teddy, the asshole kid, there are some unlikable side characters like the asshole bully kid, and Mr. Woodruff is a bit of a prick, and Angus's mom and stepfather are also pretty unlikable. They're not in the movie much, but they are pretty unlikable characters. And another thing, I'm fine with the way the movie ended, but I do kind of wish we had a bit of a happier ending. Yeah, I'm sure people knew that's how the story was going to end, and probably the only way it was going to end, but I kind of wish it still ended with Hun Ham keeping his job and later complete trying to become a much better teacher. I kind of wish that is how it ended. Especially because Angus had shitty parents that were willing to throw him into military school if he got kicked out. And didn't bother wanting to have him home for Christmas. Anyway, but I do kind of wish it still ended with Hun Ham keeping his job in a way, and having an Angus someone having a much better family in a way, and it sucks he still kind of has to live with those shitty parents of his. But all in all, The Holdovers, it's still a pretty good comedy movie, and a good Christmas movie made in the modern times too with this little 1970s feel. It's definitely a film I recommend you watch this Christmas season. If you want a new Christmas classic, you should definitely check this movie out. So in the end, I would definitely say The Holdovers is worth buying for your Christmas movie collection, no doubt, because it is very deserving of a watch for the holidays, especially if you're looking for a new Christmas comedy. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review of The Holdovers. And if we're going to rate The Holdovers, here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you are looking for a great 70s made style comedy film with a Christmas theme, then this movie is totally for you to be watched and bought for the Christmas DVDs you have in your home. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Holdovers, I'm going to give The Holdovers a 7.5 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. That wraps up my review for The Holdovers. Now, I want to know in the comments down below for those who have watched The Holdovers last year or have recently watched it, what you thought of the movie, whether you loved it or you hated it. And until then, guys, that will be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.